Okay guys, now that you have your image transferred onto your linoleum, you're going to be ready to start cutting or trimming away the spaces that you want to be left white. So remember that you're essentially creating a stamp. So we have to think about it in terms of like a relief. What areas do we want to come forward and what areas do we want to go backward? Anything that's coming forward or that's left alone is going to end up being the color of the ink, so typically black. So do I want my pears to be black or do I want my pears to be white? So I think for this one right now, what I want to do is I want to do my pears like a black, and then I want my background to be white. So what I'm going to start doing for this one is I'm going to start carving away the background. Now how we carve the background matters. Do I want to go horizontally and carve the background away going side to side? Do I want to carve the background going vertical this way? Do I want to go side to side on an angle and remove the background this way? Whichever way I choose, I want to make it consistent. Another thing to think about is, do I want to have a pattern? Do I want my background to have stripes? Do I want my background to have little curves? So check with me before we start carving, because the tricky part about doing the linoleum like this is once you carve away the linoleum, you can't glue it back in. It's gone. So it's better to have a good understanding of, okay, I'm going to take this away before you start carving. So for mine, I'm just going to keep it real basic. I'm going to do horizontal and start removing my background going horizontally. So now let's talk about the tools. These are your linoleum carving tools. The colors of the handles don't really mean anything, so you're going to find some of them are maroon, yellow, green, they're different colors. What's going to matter is the shape of the tip, okay? And you can see that the one on the left here is much skinnier and smaller than the one here on the right. So if I'm cutting small areas, I'm going to want to make sure that I have the tip that's smaller. Another trick is if you flip them over on the back and you look really closely, I don't know if you can see it here, there's a number 1 on the back of this tool here, and that is, a number 1 is the smallest tip that you can get. These are great for your really small details. So for those of you guys that are carving small letters, eyes, things like that, you're definitely going to want this smaller tip. On the back of this one, if I look carefully, we can see that there is a number 2 on there. Okay, so number 2 is going to be just a little bit bigger. You guys can see that these are kind of look like a shovel. Okay, they're kind of curved on the end. Okay, so when we look at these, you can see the difference between a 1 and a 2. If you're in doubt over which tool to start with, I always suggest starting with a 1, and then if you decide, you know what, I want those lines to be deeper or wider, you can go back over it and switch to a number 2. So how these tools get used is we never hold them, you know, like this. We don't hold them like that. We hold them like we would hold a pencil, okay, kind of like this. And the tools should always be used in a way where you're pushing them from your belly outward. You never want to take the tool and pull it towards yourself. You're not going to have good control that way. So, so that means for me, I'm going to turn my art so that I can start carving away this way. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to carve along the edges of my pears real quick, and that'll help me control where I am cutting the background. So another thing to remember is that, you know, this is linoleum, so this material is soft. Your fingers are soft. These tools can cut your skin, and so you want to make sure that you are putting the tool down, making sure your fingers aren't in front of it but off to the side, so as you start to remove it, okay? Now this tool, right, this number 1 tool right now isn't going as deep as I would like, so I'm actually going to switch to the number 2. So just going to kind of slide it along the pear here. So notice that as I cut, the tool goes like this. And I'm going to kind of, you won't hold it like this, but I want you to be able to see that I am tipping it like this and going around. I'm going to stop when I get to there. I'm going to pull this aside. So if you look closely, can see that I've already started carving just around the edge of the pear there. So I'm gonna go turn again. So this project requires you to constantly turn your art. Notice where my fingers are as I'm carving. They're not up here. I'm not holding it here because if I accidentally slip, I'm gonna hit that finger and then it'll hurt. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is this isn't a straight up and down motion. It should kind of slide like butter. It should be really easy. I'm not having to push hard. If you're having to push hard, you're doing something wrong. After you get done with carving the edges, I'm going to start carving away the background. Okay, now that I've gone around the outline of all of my pears here, I'm going to start doing my horizontal cuts in the background. So I'm just going to start with getting these cuts kind of close together. And it's okay to leave a little bit of texture. I don't need to carve super deep. If we were to look at this here on the edges, you can see that it's not super deep. I'm just getting the surface kind of removed here. This is leaving lots of little bits of linoleum on my desk. So at the end of class, I'll make sure that I grab one of the brooms from the wall and kind of sweep these up because we don't want all this to end up all over the floor and tracked into the hallway. This is a slow process. Taking your time is going to make a difference. You don't want to rush. We'll probably spend at least 2 days carving these things out. And again, if these lines aren't deep enough, I can always go back over these lines and make them deeper.